I ask members to join us in support of this motion. This is not a time for delay, it's time for action. And Canadians are counting on us, and we must not let them down.
Hear, hear.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments? L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. We'll get into the substance of the matter later, but I'd just like to ask the government House Leader whether it's still fair and relevant to spend just a few hours on a debate over spending billions of dollars. The Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his question, and I'd like to also commend him on his work. You know, this motion takes a number of things into account. It tries to strike a balance between the urgency of acting, and it is urgent, and giving an opportunity for all parties to express themselves, and both are possible through this motion. The Honourable Member for New Westminster Burnaby.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We're going to be supporting this motion reluctantly because the fact is, since midnight last night, there's no support for people experiencing financial difficulties because of COVID-19. That's a situation that was created by the government's own actions with prorogation of this parliament. The shutting down of this parliament, Madam Speaker, led to a situation where there are people today who are on the edge of the cliff, and that was irresponsible for this government to do.
Who are suffering, who are trying to put food on the table, trying to keep a roof over their head, find themselves with no supports at all because of this government's actions. This government prorogued, the Prime Minister basically shut down Parliament, and now, as people have absolutely no supports to turn to, we are forced with this motion to try to put back in place supports that were taken away by the government. So my question to my colleague, who I respect a lot, is very, very simple. Why didn't the government allow for the sitting in August that would have put this legislation in place? And why did they take millions of Canadians right to the precipice before acting?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank my colleague for his question, and I do respect him a lot also. And I mostly thank him for his support and the support from his party. I think it's the responsible thing to do. I think this motion strikes a balance between the urgency of the situation and also the capacity for all parties to be able to debate the motion. Je rappelle à tous ce qu'on sait déjà.
I'd like to remind everyone what we all know already. This is urgent, so the government has struck a balance. Remember when we were here for a question period, it was key, it was important. We've always sought to strike the right balance between the urgency of the matter and the opportunity with it in a democracy for our colleagues from other parties to ask us questions. We've done this all along throughout the pandemic, and that's why we've supported the idea of a hybrid parliament, which for some reason the Conservatives have remained steadfastly opposed to. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a bit of a hard time believing what I'm hearing. I think our friends on the government side have been avoiding the question that was asked a few minutes ago. It's September 28th. They're claiming that it's an emergency. Things have to be done before the 30th. But this summer, they prorogued the House. And the basic reason for that prorogation was the We Charity scandal that the government wanted to sweep under the rug. Now they're saying this is urgent. Canadians and Quebecers need help. Businesses need support. Employers need assistance. They need the wage subsidy to be an incentive to labor. So my question for the Honourable Government House Leader is, can he explain why they waited till 2 days before the deadline It's true that debate is important, but debate takes time. But now we're being rushed because they shuttered government to avoid a scandal. How does the government House Leader feel about that today? What does he have to say to Canadians? Thank you, the Honourable Government House Leader. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank my colleague for his question, although it's quite a partisan question, I would say. And I think that's the last thing anyone should be doing these days, is approaching everything as a partisan speech. And, you know, I never engage in partisanship, as my colleague knows full well. No, we're discussing things today that are fundamental to Canadians. We're taking steps on behalf of people who are perhaps self-employed. They've seen their income drop. They have to stay home. So given all that, can we just not leave the partisanship aside? Will the Bloc Québécois support those people or not?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It took me a second to get off mute. We've just had the worst results in Ontario that we've had since the beginning of the pandemic, with 700 cases reported on Monday morning. We're looking at closing our constituency office again. In light of where we were at in April and the fact that we've never had this bad a result in Ontario, could the honourable member maybe comment on where we're at and how seriously we really have to take where we're at right now?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleague for this very responsible question. And he's absolutely right. We're right in the middle of a second wave. I mean, it's not a theory, or not, there's no maybe or if. We're there, Madam Speaker. And we see the cases increasing in pretty much everywhere across the country. In my own province, the numbers are extremely high. I'd say that in Ontario, it's also the same thing. So we have to act responsibly. We have to act as leaders, as we all are. We're all leaders. We're the government, but we all been elected. And we have this responsibility. The responsibility is not only on the government side. It is our responsibility as members of parliament. Are we going to show up and support Canadians, or decide that we do politics and don't?
The Honourable Member for Barrie-In's.
Madam Speaker, and let's not be fooled by what's going on here. The government is putting itself in a position of an angelic position to say, can't we just get this done? Well, in fact, there was an opportunity to get it done, and the member from New Westminster Burnaby spoke about it a month ago. In fact, it was the Conservatives who on Friday proposed a motion to allow for weekend sittings of the House this past weekend so that we could work on this on behalf of Canadians. It's a $57 billion bill. There's no question that Canadians need help. But would the government just stop playing these games? Their intent here is to make the opposition look bad and realize that Canadians expect us to not just work together, first and foremost, but to have the ability to scrutinize what is in effect a $57 billion bill. Maybe we can make it better by sending it to committee. Maybe we can make it better by having more debates in this House and more interactions in this House. But instead, the government is rushing this through, and they are going to paint the opposition as the bad guys on this if we don't agree with them. They had a chance a month ago. They prorogued Parliament to save their political skin. The Prime Minister did that with the WE scandal. Why won't the government House Leader just admit that now and let Parliament do its job on this bill? Thank you.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I want to be very clear. The Conservatives don't need me to make them look bad. They can do that on their own. I can assure you of that. The other thing, Madam Speaker, they're talking.
The Honourable Leader of the Government is answering a question.
Madam Speaker, it is time, I said it before, it is time to act. We can debate and look at this and that, but the important thing is that so many Canadians are waiting for this. So many Canadians need our help. So many Canadians will benefit from what we're doing today, Madam Speaker. So I'm asking the Conservatives, if it's so important for them, are they going to support this motion?
Who's going to pay it all back?
These people are crazy. This is going to be a disaster.
facing today, and we criticize that.
Here today. We are here because we are concerned with the health of the situation of Canadians. We are concerned with the business of Canadians. They want to survive. We are concerned with Canadian workers who are out of job because of the pandemic situation. We are concerned because this government tables some ideas and some proposals and some policies that create a lack of manpower, and business have the obligation to close. In my own writing, Madam Speaker, many restaurants and many other businesses closed their door because they need to have people working there, but people prefer not going there to work and using what we call in French la PCU. Madame la Présidente, le débat est sérieux.
Madam Speaker, this is a serious debate, and that's why we need to take the time necessary to examine the proposals coming from the government.
Help Canadians. All of us on this side, we want to help the business community. All of us on our side, we are concerned with the health, and we want to help everybody on that issue. All of us on our side, we want to work hand in hand with provinces. We are not on the side to say to provinces what is good for them, but how can we help them? That's the conservative view, not the liberal one. So what we have today in front of us is a government who acts at the last minute of action. Is a government who decides to have just a 4.5 debate for $50 billion of taxpayer money. This is unparliamentary, Madam Speaker, and we strongly disagree with the approach of the government. Alors pourquoi sommes-nous ici rassemblés, Monsieur le Président, Madame la Présidente?
So why are we here, Madam Speaker? Because the government has acted in an unfortunate way over the past few weeks. Bear in mind, Madam Speaker, that when the pandemic broke out, we needed to take steps quickly. We collaborated with the government, and I'll go back to that earlier, and we wanted to collaborate. And that's why we accepted to have a hybrid parliament. That's why we accepted to allow committees to sit, and we did our job. That was pertinent, relevant. And when we discovered that the government was bogged down in the We Charity, when senior members, the member for Carleton, the member for Saint-Albert, and another asked pertinent and bothersome questions to the government, while the government, what did it do? It decided to give friends of the party a contract worth $900 million. But once our members put those difficult questions to them, they decided to stop Parliament, to prorogue the Parliament. Now, remember back in 2015, the House leader said, or the member for Papineau, rather, the Prime Minister himself said, we will never use prorogation. But at the first opportunity, that's exactly what he did. If the government had allowed Parliament to keep doing its job, we wouldn't be in this position here today. And that's what the government has put in front of us. So for 6 weeks, we were unable to do our work as parliamentarians, work that was necessary. And the government calls the House back with the throne speech, as we saw last week. The next day, it tables Bill C-2. That includes measures to help Canadians. Now, Madam Speaker, time is of the essence, because there were some measures announced by the government that were ending. And it's because of those programs that were sunsetting, we needed to vote on these measures, or we need to vote on these measures before the 1st of October. The government is the one that's in charge of the agenda. They're the ones that shut down Parliament and shut down committees for 6 weeks. The government's the one that decided to recall Parliament just last week. It could have done so earlier. It could have done so and to allow committees in Parliament to sit. But no, Madam Speaker, the government wants to control the situation, and that's why we've got just a few hours' notice to deal with these clauses that are coming to an end, and they are responsible.
Great to see you back in person.
Minister, talking about we want to walk together. We want to work together. There is no time for a political game. Madam Speaker, this is exactly what you're doing on the other side of that. We are not working together. They want to work on by themselves. Yes. They don't want to play. They say that we don't want to play political game. This is exactly what they're doing right now, Madam Speaker. Cutting the fact that when we have $50 billion in front of us and letting the parliamentarian talk about it only for 4.5 hours, this is big joke. This is everything but parliamentarian democracy. We need to work together, obviously, but we need the tools to do that. And what the government is tabling today is everything but the right tools for parliamentarian work. And we are here for Canadians, and I can assure you, Madam Speaker, that we will stay on our gun on this situation because we need to work correctly, and that's exactly what we intend to do. C'est la raison. C'est la raison pour laquelle, Madame la Présidente.
So, Madam Speaker, that's why last week when the government introduced C2, and we saw the billions of dollars in expenditures, and Thursday after QP when we heard from the government House leader that Monday and Tuesday would be devoted to C2, at that point, we realized that we wouldn't have enough time to get to the bottom of things. And in order to avoid partisan politics, Madam Speaker, we proposed an important option, i.e., to sit for 6 hours on Sunday in Committee of the Whole to allow for ministers to appear and ask questions, to get to the bottom of things on the bill. That is our job as parliamentarians.
We want to get we have to take the government for account. We are there to ask questions, and the minister are there to answer questions. Et Madame la Présidente, avec tout le respect que j'ai pour tous les...
And Madam Speaker, with all the respect that I have for Cabinet, it's a privilege to be a member of Cabinet, and if one day I have that privilege, being a minister is something, but the ministers are the ones that we want to hear before committee. Senior ministers, because they're the ones managing these billions of dollars. We wanted to hear from the Minister of Finance and from the Minister for Employment, the Minister for Families, and the Minister of Labour. 4 ministers that are at the heart of Bill C2, which involves over $50 billion in expenditures. We wanted them to be there to answer questions. Our proposal was not accepted. Okay. Well, that's part of democracy. But now, Madam Speaker, a few hours later, we learned that there's an agreement reached between the government and the NDP party on Bill C2. And those are democratic agreements. I'm not challenging that particular point. That's part of a democracy, but we'll see how the debate unfolds. But, Madam Speaker, we need to have an in-depth debate on the bill. What are we going to be able to say in a mere 4.5 hours for some $57 billion that will be spent?
The government is asking the taxpayer to spend $57 billion, and us, the representative of the Canadians, we will only have 4.5 hours of discussion and debate. Shameful. That's not enough, Madam Speaker. That's absolutely not enough. And there is no partisanship on that. Those are the facts. Technically speaking, we need to go deep into this bill. We need to know exactly what is the intention of the government. We have a job to do. But this government who killed the parliamentary process this summer, this parliament who dodged its responsibility as a government who has to work with other parties, decide to kill our responsibility to go deep into it. You know, Madam Speaker, when this government are attacking us on that, they are not attacking us. They are attacking Canadians. Yep. Here, here. Because Canadians deserve answer. Canadians have elected us to ask tough questions. And I know them. I know they are ready to answer that. Let us do our job. Here, here. This is not what this government is doing right now. Alors, Madame la Présidente, on peut s'étonner de voir que le gouvernement...
Madam Speaker, it's unfortunate to see the government taking these steps. But I've almost been here for 5 years now. They're representing the members for Saint-Laurent. I can't thank them enough. But over the past 5 years, Madam Speaker, this isn't the first time that I've seen the government be too authoritarian when it comes to the responsibilities of all parliamentarians, including opposition members. We can all unfortunately remember May of 2016, when the government put forth Motion 6, and that motion was designed to give exceptional powers to the government to quickly pass and ram through bills that required greater and more in-depth consideration. And it's unfortunate that, as you will recall, it led to a regrettable incident where the Prime Minister left his seat. He went and physically right in front of our whip, he went and grabbed onto the arm of an honourable member and moved towards the middle of the chamber.
When the Prime Minister crossed the hill, grabbing political adversary and using it, just like that. That was everything but good. That was a shame. I've never seen an act so disgraceful, and it was coming from the top. It was been done by the Prime Minister. Why? Because we were just asking to have a frank debate, and this motion 6, was everything but that. And the Prime Minister was not happy with our position, and he did something very wrong. Obviously, he excused himself the day after. He had done what he had to do. Et par la suite, Madame la Présidente, on a pu procéder.
And after that, we proceeded. But the problem with Motion 6 is that it was designed to muzzle opposition members. A year later, in 2017, the same thing. Once again, the government put forth measures to limit work at committees, and because of the vigilant work by the members of the opposition, where we worked hard at committee to try to prevent that measure from going through, the government realized that it was an unacceptable measure. Then, May in 2019, there were several bills that were introduced. They wanted debate to last only minutes for the adoption of those bills. And then remember the winter of 2019, when another Liberal scandal broke out, the SNC-Lavalin one. The government decided to put an end to the work of a committee, and that was unacceptable. Madam Speaker, the first session of the Liberal Parliament saw them use 63 time allocation motions to prevent parliamentarians from speaking in the first Parliament.
Those people said during the campaign, no, we will be very frank and very honest with all parliamentarians. We will let the Parliament work. We will not prorogue the House. But they did that, and also they adopt 63 time allocation motion. This is everything but parliamentary freedom, and this is everything but good parliamentary attitude. Ainsi donc, Madame la Présidente, nous nous sommes retrouvés avec...
So, Madam Speaker, we are now with we have the new Parliament. We're here. And when the COVID crisis broke out, all parties worked together for the benefit of Canadians. We had to give certain powers to the government to deal with unexpected issues. But they asked for some powers that went too far. Remember C-13 and the initial version, it would have enabled the government to sign blank checks until the end of 2021. They were very ambitious. And that wasn't the right approach, Madam Speaker. Our vigilant approach, alongside the work of the other parties, got the government to stand down. But it was a very ambitious government when it came to saying special rules, Parliament can't sit. We're going to give ourselves power to manage these matters until the end of December 2021.
How could we accept the fact that this government, in their first thought, were ready to have full power for more than a year and a half? That is not parliamentary democracy. Canada deserves better. We do understand and we do recognize that there is some emergency situation. We have to address it with some emergency rules. But we shall respect the responsibility of parliamentarians. And again, this morning, this government is so happy to shut down the parliamentary system, and this is not acceptable for us. Madame la Présidente, nous sommes très...
Madam Speaker, it's sad to see that once again the government wants to prevent parliamentarians from doing their work. We're aware of the fact that we need measures, good measures for Canadians, measures that help Canadian families, and that take into account Canadian entrepreneurs and businesses, Canadian workers who've lost their jobs. We need to take into account men and women who are concerned about their families, their children. Yes, we need to take those steps. We need to set partisanship aside and act in the best interest of all Canadians. We have work to do. And when we're talking about spending more than $57 billion, parliamentarians must do a good job, and 4.5 hours is simply not enough to do that.
Questions and comments? The honourable member for... Sorry?
He's not quite done.
Oh, sorry.
Therefore, I table this amendment and may it be amended A at paragraph D by substituting the word, and I quote, be deferred at the end of the period. That's not a Friday. B, by substituting paragraph C and E with the following.
Si le projet de loi...
See that if the bill is adopted at the second reading, that it be sent to a plenary committee, and the next time the House form a plenary committee to study the bill, provided that one, that the committee is subject to the provisions of the House, and two, that the Speaker may preside, and that he can preside from the throne, and that the Minister of Finance, the Deputy Minister, the Minister of Employment, the Minister for Families, Children and Social Development, and the Minister of Employment be invited to appear. 5, that every minister be asked questions for 95 minutes.
Recognize parties and one member who does not belong to a recognized party in a fashion consistent with the proportion observed during oral questions, following the rotation used for questions by the former Special Committee on the COVID-19 pandemic. B, no member shall be recognized for more than 5 minutes at a time, which may be used for posing questions. C, members may be permitted to split their time with one or more members by so indicating to the chair. And D, questions shall be answered by the minister or another minister acting on her or his behalf. 6,
the notice of amendments to the bill may be tabled with the clerk of the House at any time after adopting this order until the end of the second hour of debate in Committee of the Whole. 7, at the end of the time set out for asking questions or when no other member rises to speak, the Speaker passed to vote immediately any questions necessary to dispose of the bill at the committee stage, including every amendment tabled with the Clerk of the House pursuant to Sitting Order 6D, when the bill is the subject of a report of the committee, that we dispose of any questions necessary at the bill at third reading, dispose that no votes be deferred, and that while the bill is being studied pursuant to these dispositions.
You